Welcome to the Daoscape Arts podcast. This is part one of a three-part podcast titled The Shaolin Solution, recorded whilst relaxing at ZhiHua Temple in Beijing, China, with British Shaolin Kungfu coach AJ Donnely. AJ arrived in China in 1999 in pursuit of his dream to study Kung Fu at the Shaolin Temple. This episode explores AJ's work helping small groups to learn Kung Fu at Shaolin Temple, his background in martial arts before arriving in China, and the important role of one's applied intention in martial arts practice. We're here in the, I've forgotten the name of this temple.
ZhiHua
Temple.
Temple of Wisdom.
Temple of Wisdom. That belonged to a eunuch about 500 years ago, is that right?
1444. Not a particularly good number. I'm surprised they built a temple in that year, to be honest with you.
Really? Or they choose the year as an auspicious year? Or?
I mean, as far back as you can go, feng shui has always been massively important in the symbology of numbers. And so to build something in 44, but I wonder if it would have been 44. When did the Gregorian calendar arrive in China?
I have no
There's
idea.
a good thing for you to investigate.
I think the Chinese were way ahead of the West when it came to calendars, because they were using the lunar calendar, I think. Yeah. So we're here. It's quite a small temple, but has a
it's
nice
very
feeling.
secluded, very unknown.
Right. So you guys have been using this for your culture keys
Back in
events?
the day, yes. This is where we started out with our cultural classes, because it's a beautiful location, centrally located, and very unknown, so it was always good to start here.
And so these days you're still continuing the same programs, or you've kind of modified what you were doing here?
We modify our programs after every class, basically, because we get feedback of everyone, so we try and incorporate that into the next workshop and the next workshop and the next workshop. But obviously now we're based outside the 6th Ring Road in the suburbs, so we have a lot more freedom, we can do a lot more there.
Cool. So the main topic, as I've said to you before, the main topic was the Shaolin Solution to to world problems. But I think I'm not sure how many of these podcasts will be recorded and at what point they'll be put online. But I think it'd be good to have a little bit of background. I think I've heard an interview with you before where you talked about.
You've been stalking me.
Maybe a little. Where you talked about coming to China and why you came to China and why you were inspired by Shaolin Kungfu. So it'd be nice if you could introduce a little about this martial arts. Is it CK Martial Arts program?
So yeah, I mean, there are 3 divisions of the company. So there's Cultural Keys, which is like the main umbrella, and then under that we have the Culture Boutique, which is where we sell Chinese art and cultural accessories. And then we have Martial Arts, which is everything martial arts related, Chinese martial arts, and that's where we really started everything from.
Right. And you've just come back, a couple of weeks ago, from your latest course at Shaolin.
Yeah, we just had a 10-day program in May there.
And you're a coach there, or?
You know, I keep changing the word that I use to describe me. I don't know if I'm just a translator or a guide or a coach. Again, it comes down to just using a name for something, really. But yeah, I act as a facilitator. Maybe that's the best word. I'll put that in the PDF in the future. But yeah, okay. I'm the facilitator of the participants who we take on the program. Right.
But in the photos that I saw, the recent photos where you were at Shaolin Temple, it looked like you were leading the class, or you were... I mean, does a monk kind of introduce the main practices and then you lead students through?
So, I mean, we've always done it as 2 separate parts of a whole program. So every day, the students that we take there are with the monks for 4 hours, where they learn things like Jibengong, which is the foundation of Chinese martial arts, so the basic postures and movements, and then the form. So the last few years we've been doing Tongbi Chuan, which is a traditional Shaolin form.
Right.
So they learn that with the monks, and then with 4 hours with me, before and after the monks' classes, they'll learn supplementary exercises. So we'll do like applications, combat training, focusing on speed, accuracy, power, just to give them I mean, if you stay at the temple long term, so if you're there like 3-4 years, you would naturally, in the progress of being there, you would learn all these factors. But we try to make it a complete package in a short amount of time, so that when people leave, they have an understanding of what it is to train Shaolin, so they have things they can take away with them, and not just like the movements they can copy, but an idea of what those movements lead to, what's the purpose of those movements, how they can be training them. So yeah.
And so each course is 2 weeks long, is that right? Or
so in May it's always a 10-day program, and then in September we have the 20-day program.
In September?
Yes.
Oh. So it's just twice a year that these courses are run, or?
Yeah, I mean, when we started this 4 years ago, it was 6 or 7 times a year, but it just became too much to always be away from Beijing that often, as we were developing the company and bringing other cultural programs. So now it's just twice a year, and that allows us to focus 100% on being there with the participants, while still focusing on other things when we're back in Beijing.
Right.
And having 2 programs, a shorter program and a longer program, makes it accessible to pretty much everyone.
So the people who go on the course, they tend to have a martial arts background already, or?
Nope, I would say probably 85% off the top of my head of people who join us have 0 martial arts experience.
Gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and I'd say 90% are flying into China for the first time. So yeah, they're complete beginners in every sense of the term.
And on the course, are they expected to do things like running up the mountains and things like that, or?
They're expected to do everything. I mean, that's why we have 2 different lengths now. So for the people who perhaps do have more experience or are already more athletic, a 2-week program is more suitable. And for people who don't have such a sporting background, or perhaps a little bit older or less in shape, a shorter program is better for them, but they're equally as intense in terms of what they're expected to do.
Right.
And it's actually one of the requirements for application. You have to say on the application form that you are committed to giving 100% when you're at the temple, because we want to ensure that everyone, this is not a tourism program, you know?
Yeah.
We don't show people around, and we strictly say this is not a holiday. You know, we want you to enjoy the program and get something out of it, but you're not here as a tourist. You're here as a participant to experience and learn something, which is what we're all about.
Great. Yeah, I mean, as I've said to you before, I'd love to take part in the program at some point. It's maybe a little pricey, but what does the price cover? It covers everything. I think that's what you said.
Absolutely everything, from arrival in Beijing to departure. You know, so we include accommodation in Beijing, accommodation when we're on the Shaolin program, all food, all training, all transportation inside China, clothing, just everything that you need while you're here. We take care of everything.
Right. I'm really surprised. I mean, I've been in China for quite a while, but I've never heard of your program myself. Maybe I wasn't looking in the right places. I don't know. But I'm surprised. I think you've said to me before that it's actually difficult to study in this way at the temple with the monks. I mean, you hear so often people say, oh, you know, Shaolin is a joke now. It's just a tourist trap. There's just these big, huge commercial schools. And, you know, it's not really worth going there to pay money to train, etc. You've said, I think, before that you've got some contacts there, you've got some relationship with the temple yourself?
Yeah, I mean, we have a formal cooperation with the Shaolin Temple. So our students don't study at one of the small schools outside the temple, they're actually studying inside the Shaolin Temple with the actual Shaolin monks. Right. I mean, to correct a previous point, it's not difficult to study at the Shaolin Temple. You know, you just go to their website, you let them know how long you want to train and what you want to train, and then you turn up there, and it's all sorted. And a lot of people contact us and say, oh, I want to study for 1 month, 6 months, a year. And when people say that, I'm like, yeah, here's their contact. Just go straight to the temple, because, you know, we don't do that. We only do short-term programs. Right. But a lot of people come to us because we do the A to Z. Right. You know, people don't have to think about anything. We help them sort the visas out. We pick them up at the airport. We get them there so they can fully immerse themselves in what they came here to do. So it's 2 very different things. You know, for the people who want that, the whole journey of bringing themselves to China and making their way down there and sorting this and this out, then, you know, going direct with the temple, it's perfect for them. But for people who would rather only have like a week or 10 days to be there and just want to get straight into it and have that total immersion, then perhaps a martial arts program is more suitable for them.
Yeah, I think most people, I mean, who maybe dream of coming to train at Shaolin probably don't have the time, you know, free from work, etc., to plan everything and maybe learn their Chinese, their bit of Mandarin, and you know, figure out the travel systems, etc. Maybe.
I mean, and with us, I mean, like I said, they learn the Tongbi Chuan form on both the 1 week and the 2 week. For the international students who go direct to the temple, that could take them maybe 5-6 weeks to learn, but with us, they learn that in 6 days, and it's to just as high a level, because we have a teacher who is only for our group, as opposed to if you're going direct with the temple, you'll be put in a group with all the other international students who are currently there. So that helps.
Yeah, so they get more of a specialist service. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's one reason our price is a little bit higher. Plus, we stay in a nice hotel. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean...
That's a pity, maybe.
Well, this is a thing, because when we first started it, they were staying in the lower level accommodation that's there, but people were training 8 hours every day. Really, what you want at the end of the day is a comfortable bed in a comfortable environment that's quiet and that you can just rest. And that wasn't so easy in the other accommodation that was initially provided, so we upped that a little bit to ensure that there are still some creature comforts. You know, because when you're in the temple, when you're training, you are giving 100%. No choice. I keep pushing people to make sure that's what they're always giving. But then when you go back at night, you can get a nice meal and a nice bed, and you can just like relax, so that the next day when you come back, you can give 100% for 8 hours all over again.
So the focus is more really on the training, more than the kind of like monastic lifestyle aspects of it. Would you say that?
I think in terms of Shaolin, they're the same thing. A monastic lifestyle and Kung Fu, they go hand in hand at Shaolin. I mean, obviously...
I mean, the dormitory or the,
Oh, right, yes. Yeah, definitely.
Right, And so you said, I think you've told me before that you started doing this 7 years ago or 5 years ago that this
We
began?
started the company in 2013 and we ran our first program in 2014.
Right.
So this is our 5th year, is that 5? Yeah. 5 years now. And we've taken almost 100 people to the temple.
Right.
Across 12 programs,
And you've been in China for...
Ever.
For much longer than myself.
Long time.
I think you told me you came when you were 20 or 21?
21. I came just after my 21st birthday.
That was kind of a plan to come after your birthday, or?
No, I mean, I'd started planning since I was 19. And then, but I mean, that was back in 97. I was 19. Yeah, I know, I'm really old. And obviously back then the internet wasn't really a thing and you didn't have the resources that we have now. So number one, saving enough money, finding a job, getting myself here. I had to go to a travel agent to book a ticket back then. I mean, do travel agents even exist anymore? I don't know. But yeah, it was a long process to finally get myself on that plane and get myself to China.
And so you arrived in China and you headed straight for the Shaolin Temple as soon as you arrived?
Oh, I wish. That would have been really cool and a great story. No, I was teaching in a kindergarten in the provincial capital of Hebei. So that was Shudadrong. So I took a job there.
Why did you choose to take a job instead of go straight for the temple?
Because I had no idea how to get to the temple. I didn't even know where the temple was back then. I'd seen it in the 1980s and 1990s movies. But again, finding information on how to get to the Shaolin Temple, and in retrospect, doing research and talking to people now like I can, back in 99, there were very, very, very few foreigners at the temple, or people who had studied. It was like a handful that far back. And it wasn't... I was very naive. I probably still am very naive, but back then I was even more naive. I had this image that I would just walk off a plane and everyone around me would be doing Kung Fu.
Yeah.
And I could just go up to a master and say, "Oh, Shuffle, please teach me."
I had the same idea.
Yeah, I think most of us do. And obviously it didn't work out like that. But, yeah.
Right. And then so you thought, right, I need to get a job just to float around a bit and see what's going on, and then, find your feet, so to speak. And did you have a plan maybe to learn Mandarin Chinese very well before you decided to find a master? Or
I've always had a plan to learn Chinese, and that's an ongoing plan, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'd taken a few classes before I came out, but again, it was the thinking of, oh, how difficult can it be? I mean, I'd never learned a second language before I came out here, and it was probably 2 or 3 years after I arrived before I actually started learning. But it didn't even occur to me, because, I mean, you're 21. I mean, you don't really think, I mean, back then we didn't, you don't really think these things that far in advance and plan them like we do as old men now.
Yeah. Maybe you were just planning just to copy the master's movements, right?
Yeah,
just like in
I was
a movie.
Thinking, I already know Kung Fu. I've been training for like the last, whatever it was, 10 years by that point.
Oh, really? I mean, before you came to China,
yeah.
you've been training?
Yeah, I've been training in martial arts since the original Karate Kid movie came out.
So what did you study first in the UK then?
I started karate first.
Right.
Obviously after watching Karate Kid. So my middle school was teaching it, so I went straight to the evening classes. And then that class got shut down, so I started looking for a new style, and a local sports centre was offering Kung Fu classes. So I went there.
And what style of Kung Fu is that?
That's a very good question. Because obviously in England we only use the Cantonese names for Kung Fu styles. So it's like Lap Choi?
Oh, right.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to contact him and find out
Some
what
Hong
it
Kong
was.
style. Or,
it was a southern style. And I thought that was real Kung Fu because, I was, 14, 15 years old, I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And I trained with that teacher for maybe 3 years. And I thought...
Did you get something from that? I mean, what do you think you got from that? Was it like flexibility or sparring or anything like that?
I probably got absolutely nothing. It didn't improve my confidence, it didn't improve my fitness, it didn't improve my flexibility, because it was a very competitive focused style. Because I didn't know at the time, and I know now, that the gentleman who was my teacher, he was more focused on kickboxing than he was traditional styles.
Right.
So he was still teaching the traditional styles, but he was teaching it more in a competitive way, as in like, point system.
Right. So you got some kind of sparring kind of experience from doing
that,
I'm guessing.
Yes, but without what I would now call the intent. Because if you're being taught something for a sparring competition, because obviously back then in 94, 95, we didn't really have MMA and real competitive fighting, so it's still point system. So you're taught to tap, pull back, pull back, pull back. Yeah. So that's what I learnt, and that's what I started applying to the forms that I was practicing as well. So yeah, there was no intention being taught behind it.
No true spirit of Kung Fu, right?
Exactly, no spirit. So we were wearing these lovely Kung Fu suits and with our lovely silky belts, and we felt great as kids. But it wasn't until, and I think I've told you this before, I started broadening my horizons in terms of philosophy and religions and different ways of thinking, because I wanted to find answers, because I was in a pretty bad place then, and I wanted to understand myself and the world that I lived in, and I came across books on Chinese philosophy and this thing called meditation, and I'd never heard of this thing before. I went to a Catholic school throughout most of my childhood, so this idea of meditation, sitting down and being quiet, and allowing the mind to go silent, and so you can expand and contract and all these kind of things. I thought, wow, this is amazing. I want to do this. Yeah. So the following Saturday class, I went to my Kung Fu teacher, and I said, Shuffle, please, can you teach me meditation? And he's like, yes, very easy. Here's a pillow. Go and lie down.
He said lie down? Or?
He said go to sleep. Grab a pillow, go to sleep. That's meditation for you. And I was like, that doesn't sound quite right. So yeah, I never went back to that class again. And then I found myself a couple of weeks later at a new Kung Fu class with Master David Rogers, who I'm still friends with today, really great guy. And he had studied in, I want to say Canton, in Guangzhou, for several years with a master there. And then he brought that back to England because he wanted to promote true traditional martial arts in England. And so through him, I really started to understand what traditional martial arts were, and he understood the traditional concepts of speed, accuracy, power, hardness, and what I was calling until recently intent, but now I've translated it correctly to cruelty. I've got to love Chinese. I think intent is easier for Westerners to grasp and understand, but cruelty is the correct translation of the Chinese word.
You mean the intent to kind of like do the deed, so to speak?
Exactly, yes. Yeah. To have an idea of why you're actually doing what you're doing. I mean, it's a bit of a sidetrack, but for me, that is always my number one thing in life now. Whether it's for myself, for my company, for my family, or for people I'm talking with, I always say, what do you want? That's my thing. Because if people don't know what they want, then they don't know how to get it. If they don't know how to get it, they don't know which direction to be moving in life. And it's all about your intention. Why are you doing the thing you're doing? What is it you want to achieve? Yeah. If you have no intention, then you're just like a puppet just floating in the air, And hey, if that's what you want, if that is your intention, just to be that cloud, then that's great, but then you have an intention, So yeah, that's pretty much my driving focus in life now. But yeah, and it comes same in martial arts. If you don't have an intention to your punch, to your kick, to your block, to whatever technique it is you're doing, then what is that exactly is that you're doing? You're just floating around.
I think that's in karate and taekwondo. They call it like a spirited shout at the end of when they finish their form. This kind of, is it a similar idea to this in Shaolin with the intent?
I mean, different schools have different interpretations of them. There are some schools that would say that the different sounds represent different vibrations. And that different vibrations are related to different energies and different frequencies of qi.
Like a qigong thing,
yeah, exactly.
Right?
So you're releasing qi with those sounds at different frequencies. Now, I'm obviously not a scientist, so I don't know exactly whether that has any basis or not. But hey, it sounds cool, So
well, I mean, voices resonate, don't they? And
yes.
You can feel it resonating in your body. And I think there's maybe something like a kind of like massaging effect, maybe. And people talk about, singing from the belly, from the diaphragm. So maybe it's got something there. But
I think worst case scenario, it will raise the spirit.
Right. Yeah. And is that linked with this idea of intent that you were talking about? I was thinking of in terms of like what you said, cruelty. And it sounds kind of, it just sounds bad, doesn't it? You're just saying, I'm practicing cruelty. But I think what it's saying is that, if you walk the path of martial arts, then you have to kind of face this kind of dark side.
Yeah.
People fighting or people killing one another. And that's
you have to do what you have to do in martial arts. That's the whole point. And if you don't have that intention, the intention of cruelty, then what is it you're doing? You're just slapping someone, You have to have the sense of, I am using martial arts to defend myself or defend others. And in order to do that, for it to be effective, I have to be cruel. I have to accept that I will cause suffering to others, but only as far as to end the suffering of others. That's the way I'm currently interpreting that and how Shaolin Buddhists do martial arts and these kind of things.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I think it's that thing of, if it's not as serious, if it's not a life or death thing, you're probably not going to put as much of your heart into it as if it was just like some dance you're going to do, in the park. Yeah,
exactly.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so you're right. We went off on a little tangent,
but
a very interesting tangent. So you found a new teacher who kind of taught this to you, and he'd inherited that directly from a Chinese teacher, or
a Chinese teacher that he'd found in Guangzhou, in Canton. Yes, That's where he studied for several years, and he still trains with that master 30 years later, which is insane. He was actually in China maybe 6 months ago, and he actually came to the Shaolin Temple, and I met him there, and I took him around. It was awesome. It was awesome being back with my my original master.
Yeah.
Who I'd learnt. Basically, what I'm teaching now are the things that I learnt from him. I didn't understand them at the time, but now that I'm trying to pass those things on and apply them more into what I'm doing and what I'm showing other people to do, I'm like, oh, right, that's what he meant. Okay, yeah, now that I get, that's good.
Right. And do you think it actually, when you met him before, did you feel he had some quality of character that he had cultivated through martial arts? Or was he, because often you find these martial arts teachers who have been on a power trip, they're kind of like a cult leader who've hypnotized their students into just falling over for them, etc. Was there some aspect of his character that you felt drawn to in terms of what Kung Fu had done to him, as opposed to, in a good way, as opposed to him just kind of like inflating his ego with using Kung Fu for that?
David is extremely humble, number one.
Right.
He will go out of his way to avoid conflict with anyone. If someone disagrees with him, he'll just be like, okay, sure, that's great. That's what you believe. This is what I believe. But if people would disagree, he would always say, okay, then come to my class, and then we'll train together.
Right.
And then we'll see if that resolves the issue or not. So he never backed down, but he was always very humble and very peaceful. And that's something I always remember, because I was with David maybe 5 years, I want to say, and I was training there almost every day at that school.
Wow.
And I like to think that him and I became very good friends, and we shared a lot of information with each other. And yeah, I think who I am now is a very big part of what he showed me and who he was.
Right.
And his intensity was just insane. I still have a photo of myself and him taken back in like 97 or 98, sitting on my desk at my office here. And just always the look in his eyes. I always try and conjure that spirit now. And when I'm with my students, I look at them and I see if that energy is rising up through their eyes. And it was just this burning look. Because, in normal conversation, it'd be sitting around, having a laugh, it'd be great. But as soon as the intention changed, whether he was teaching or performing, it was a switch on like that, exactly. And just this fire would come out of his eyes, and you're just like, damn. Yeah, it was, yeah. To this day, it still amazes me.
I've heard some kind of poetic descriptions of this kind of thing, like things like a leopard emerging from the fog. This kind of... You said fire coming out of the eyes, but like... I've seen it in some of these Kung Fu practitioners in China. They put on this kind of, like you said, some energy, and it has that kind of animal kind of intensity to it. Yeah, amazing. So in a way, did you think that obviously kindled something inside you, and is that what gave you the confidence at age 21 to come to? You're a big guy as well. I'm guessing you have some confidence as well on that front. But maybe to come to China and feel, this is the right thing. Age 21, we've got a lot of ideas about what we might want to achieve in our lives. I know I did. At that age, I was, I was training Kung Fu, and I was also interested in Zen meditation and practicing Tai Chi and things. But I don't think I had the confidence at that point to be able to come by myself, especially to a foreign country and all the way to China. That seems,
This is the end of podcast part 1, The Shaolin Solution with AJ Donnely, which is continued in part 2 of this series.